Today's video will review a horror movie from 2020 called Anything for Jackson. There are spoilers in the video ahead. Let's get started. An old couple are seen having a casual conversation in their home. They are wondering if a woman has arrived already, then they hear her outside and follow after her. Suddenly, they're seen dragging a woman inside the house, as the wife says mind the baby, and hits the woman over the head. The husband takes the woman upstairs with the elevator as the wife closes the front door. The woman is seen gagged and a child's hand is touching her on the face. She wakes up frantically, seeing a child next to her, greeting her. The wife calls out that she's awake, and when the husband joins them, she introduces herself as Audrey and him as Henry. She tells the woman, Shannon, that they felt this would be the best way for her to go missing. Audrey says that they won't hurt her or her baby, then sends Henry off to do the test. He's outside, and as the woman starts screaming inside the house, he calls his wife and tells her that nothing can be heard outside. Shannon asks what they want from her, and Audrey tells her that they need to bring their grandson back. When she asks if the boy in the room is the grandson, the old woman is surprised that she was able to see him because he's dead. Audrey puts on some music in the room, saying Jackson loves music, and leaves her alone with him. Audrey tells Henry that Jackson showed himself to the woman, which makes him happy. He leaves for work and on his way out runs into Rory. Audrey comes back into the room, bringing vitamins for the woman and going through her things, taking her phone out of her pocket, as well as some pills. When she leaves for a moment to get her glasses, the woman grabs the phone, but is quickly stopped by Audrey coming back in the room. She unlocks her phone and goes on her social media, sending a message to a man to meet her later that day. Audrey calls Henry at work and tells him it's done. At his practice, his assistant asks about Shannon, who was his patient, and if she'll be coming in soon, considering she's nearing her due date. He lies his way out of the situation. In a flashback, the old couple is seen with an ancient book preparing to raise a raven back from the dead. Audrey chants an incantation and the raven is brought back. Henry doesn't like what she's doing, but she tells him that she only needed proof if the book is real. Back in the present, the two of them walk to a community center, trying to keep up appearances. And they meet with Ian. He tells them that he couldn't find the book they already have, and Audrey is upset he might tell someone about it. They walk into a Satanist meeting. As everyone puts on their robes and light black candles, the main priestess starts the prayer to Satan. In another flashback, Henry is talking to Shannon as her doctor, telling her that she's pregnant. She's not happy about it, considering she doesn't even know the father's name. As he's trying to comb her, he also texts his wife that he found the right one and takes a picture of Shannon for his wife. The same picture is seen on the wall in the room she's sleeping in. She coughs up blood, waking up to see that the couple have prepared the room for a Satanist ceremony. She begs them not to go through with it, as they are already praying and inviting Satan into their home. They both cut their hands to offer their blood and spill it onto a heart when Shannon begins convulsing. They pray in Latin, as everything in the room animates, and they finally see Jackson in the room. He points toward the woman, as Audrey keeps reading, and then he disappears. A demon appears next to Shannon for a few moments, and when it's gone, the couple check to see how she is and hear the baby's heartbeat. Audrey thinks it's Jackson's heartbeat, but Henry isn't convinced. The following morning, Henry wakes up and Audrey isn't next to him. He looks over to the bathroom and a woman is flossing her teeth, as he keeps talking to her, thinking it's Audrey. Suddenly, his wife calls him on the phone and he realizes that the woman in the bathroom isn't Audrey. She doesn't stop flossing her teeth and they keep falling on the ground. She turns and walks toward Henry. Suddenly, Audrey comes in the room and the woman disappears. Later, he's working in his office when a police officer comes to see him. Detective Bellows tells him that Shannon is a missing person and that she's tracing her steps. Henry lies that she cancelled her meeting, but his assistant reminds him of the lie he told her before, that he saw her walking by his house the day she went missing. The detective isn't fooled by his shenanigans. He calls Audrey and tells her what happened, but she doesn't take the fact that he changed the plan lightly. Suddenly, there's a knock on the door and she goes to answer it. There's a ghost trick-or-treating on the other side. Audrey dismisses the ghost and closes the door, but there's another knock. She opens the back door and the ghost is there too. Immediately as she closes that one, the ghost knocks on another door inside the house. She walks upstairs to call Henry, but hears running in the house, and when she looks down, it's the little ghost. She finally reaches Henry on the phone and tells him what is happening. When he tells her to give the ghost her soul, she chases after the ghost to the elevator, but it comes out of it transformed into a giant version of itself. Later, Shannon asks Audrey why she was screaming before, and she says that her daughter came to see her. She avoids the question about what happened to her daughter. Shannon is left alone in the room and immediately tries to escape, but when she reaches to one of her restraints, sees a man suffocating next to her bed. He stands up, walks around the room, then notices her and walks back to her, crawling on top of her and biting into her pregnant belly as she screams for Audrey. She's at the door and can't get it open, but when she finally does, the suffocating ghost runs toward her. Suddenly Henry appears, stopping the ghostly manifestation. The couple are getting ready for bed, as Henry tells her that he stitched up Shannon and she'll be alright. Audrey doesn't know what they did and wonders if they made a mistake. In a flashback, Henry meets with Shannon outside of his house. She's excited to be a mom, not afraid anymore. Back in the present, Rory comes back and Henry goes to meet him, while Audrey plans to sedate Shannon. The two men talk outside, but the man is persistent to clean his driveway. He starts the machine in front of the house, as Audrey and Henry argue inside. She's afraid that they did the ritual wrong and Jackson isn't there. Rory calls out to them from the front yard and says that they did it right and Jackson is coming back to them, then suddenly puts his head inside the machine. Later, Audrey goes inside the room to clean Shannon up. She removes the restraints and puts a cozy on the handcuffs. Shannon asks if they'll kill her after they get the baby, but Audrey says that their rule was not to harm her. As they talk, the door of the room opens and Audrey tells her that she reminds her of her daughter. She was in the same accident with Jackson, but didn't die right away. She killed herself in the elevator in the house. Meanwhile, Henry is burying Rory in the woods when his phone rings. It's the detective doing a follow-up with him, asking to come and see him. He tries to get some information out of her and she avoids his questions. She tells him she'll meet him at the house in an hour. Back at the room, Shannon pleads with Audrey to let her be Jackson's mom, along with him, to look after him after they die. She says she'll do whatever they want. There's a knock on the door, so Audrey gags her again and leaves locking the door behind her, but the door unlocks by itself. Henry runs home, but the detective is there already. She's waiting for him inside Shannon's room, with Audrey handcuffed next to her. She tells him to get on his knees, as Shannon is begging for her to let her out, but the detective turns to her and calmly kills her. Henry releases Audrey from the cuffs and they get the detective's body out of the room. Henry buries her in the same place as Rory. The next day, Audrey tries to tell him about Shannon's request, but there's a knock on the door. It's Ian, asking for the book. They show him the book and Henry tells him the story of how he got it. Audrey asks if he could read it, to which he says that it's been written in different languages and dialects, and is possibly the oldest book in the world. They ask about the invocation spell and he tells them to show him exactly what they did when they used it. When they do, he says that once the door to purgatory is opened, every ghost there will be looking for a host. He asks about the host they used and they take him to Shannon. They ask Ian if Jackson is in there and he replies that he isn't, but that he can be. They need to finish the ceremony by making a sacrifice of the mother. Ian says he can perform the ceremony if they allow him to keep the book and give him $10,000. He will perform the ceremony the next day, but they need to put rock salt around Shannon and themselves to keep the other ghosts away. That night, both Henry and Audrey are in the room with Shannon, having put salt around the entire thing. Shannon tells Henry about her idea for the baby, but he says she can't win a moral argument with him because he already made a deal with the devil. He tells her that Audrey was the one driving the car when Jackson died, but she couldn't remember. Henry is doing all of it for her. Suddenly, the ghost of the detective walks in and kills herself all over again. Ian is in his basement, reading the book, when his mom calls him up for lunch. He angrily grabs his stuff and leaves. Then, he arrives at the house and as he walks in the bedroom, the detective appears behind him. The others aren't surprised by that anymore, saying she's been doing that all night. Ian starts right away, giving the couple instructions on what to read. The detective walks in again. He says that salt just slows them down, but a sacrifice will stop them. Ian continues with the instructions as the detective shows up again, but doesn't shoot herself this time. Him and Henry go outside and he measures where certain objects should be placed around the house. He tells Henry that he is the one that needs to kill the mother, without hesitation. Because if he does hesitate, they will all die. Back in the room, Audrey is drawing a pentagram, as Shannon tries to distract her. She asks for some food and Audrey goes out to get some. Shannon breaks out from her restraints and pours water on herself, pretending she's having the baby. Audrey comes in and calls for Henry. She's getting Shannon ready as the two men come in. Ian disturbs the salt as he walks inside. He immediately starts reading from the book, as Audrey is worried if Jackson is in there. And Henry keeps getting messages from the priestess of their cult. The pentagram starts shining and Ian says it's working. Henry picks up and it's the priestess telling him that Ian killed his mother and drew symbols on his house. He tells Audrey that something is wrong with Ian, but tells him to keep going. Shannon gets out of her restraints and grabs Audrey, saying she'll cut her throat if Henry doesn't undo her legs. Both Audrey and Ian tell him not to do it. But Henry still does it, then Ian kills Audrey, saying a mother's a mother. He spills blood at Henry and continues the ceremony, while Shannon is trying to get out of the restraints and Audrey dies in Henry's arms. Suddenly Shannon stabs Ian and a giggling ghost comes in and grabs him, taking him away. He can be heard screaming in the other room, as Shannon tries to get out. Suddenly, the suffocating ghost rises behind her and goes toward her. Henry tells her to go and to forgive them. At that moment something starts coming out of Audrey's body and scares the other ghost. The same happens to Henry and Shannon runs away. She sees the giggling ghost and escapes, then the other two and goes to open the door, when the giant ghost appears outside. She slams the door. Meanwhile, from the dead bodies of Audrey and Henry, a creature has risen. Shannon is in the kitchen when she sees the keys, but suddenly the detective appears and walks up to her, saying she'll protect her. The creature walks out of the bedroom. Shannon comes out of the house and sees Rory there, but walks past him. She looks up and sees Jackson in the window, being taken away the next moment. Shannon drives away, but as she's driving through the woods she sees something on the road. On a second look she notices it's a pregnant woman. She looks down and sees blood on her belly. That's it for the video. Thank you for watching till the end.